Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on what's new in Microsoft Fabric and Power BI. I just wanted to kickstart the day by firstly introducing myself. So as you can see, my name is Toby. I'm a data and AI consultant at Thorogood, and I'm based in the UK office. I'm particularly interested in data engineering and data visualization, and I enjoy creating data insights from data to meet specific needs or goals. Thorogood has worked on countless projects in this space, and I'm currently working on a client project where we're implementing a Power BI solution for reporting needs. I'm also here with my colleague Oscar. You can see him on the screen. But similar to me, he's also a data consultant at Thorogood, but he's based in the Boston office. Oscar has experience on multiple projects using Microsoft products such as Data Factory and Power BI. So let me quickly just give an overview of today's agenda. Firstly, I'm going to be giving a quick introduction to Thorogood. I'm going to touch a little bit on who we are and what is our expertise. And then next, I'm going to give an overview of Microsoft Fabric and Microsoft Power BI, including the evolution of architecture and components within Fabric. And then we'll move on to the focus of this webinar, which is going to include the updates in both Fabric and Power BI. And then to wrap up, we're going to have a demo in Power BI and go over some of the key takeaways. So let me start with an introduction to Thorogood. We're going to talk about who we are and what we can offer. So Thorogood is a specialist independent consultancy which operate globally within the data and AI space. We have offices in the UK, US, Brazil, Singapore, and India. We mostly work with large global organizations, mostly in the pharmaceutical, consumer packaged goods, finance, and insurance industries. We offer a range of services, but the bulk of what we do is solution and development. Our products fall into the categories of data engineering, data science, and data visualization. So essentially, we help our customers make sense of their data using analytic solutions as well. So this just includes end-to-end data solution delivery, data architecture and solution design, tool training and user adoption, application support and enhancement, and also data strategy and roadmaps. As you can see from the diagram on the right, our niche and approach is rooted in understanding the available data and business goals, and then we can use the right technology to achieve these goals with the available data. Because of this, customers and their business objectives are at the forefront of our approach. I mentioned earlier that we're an independent consultancy, and I just wanted to go into a little bit more depth on what this actually means. Essentially, we partner with many key vendors in the data and AI space. We aren't constrained to providing solutions in one particular software or technology. You can see just a glimpse of the technologies we work with on the slide. I'm sure many of you watching today recognize these technologies or even use them in your own solutions. We have consultants trained in all of these different technologies, allowing us to understand our customers and approach a solution with the best technology based on the data and the specific requirements of a business. One more thing I would like to touch on is that Thorogood have been a Microsoft partner for over 25 years, and they are a very key and very close partner of us. This relationship reflects the familiarity and confidence we have with the Microsoft tools and the trust Microsoft has with Thorogood. We also work directly with Microsoft on product success, for example, Purview, which some of you may know. Before we dive into some of the recent updates, I'm going to give an overview of both Fabric and Power BI for any of you who might be new to them. Let's first start by looking at Power BI. Power BI is an interactive data visualization software developed by Microsoft with a primary focus on business intelligence. There are three main areas of focus that I want to discuss. Firstly, all data. Power BI allows you to connect to data from multiple sources, transform it, and merge it to create interactive reports and dashboards to gain insights from your data. It's important to note that this supports both on-premise and cloud data sources. Next, we have for everyone. In Power BI, you can create interactive reports to cater a wide range of users. This goes all the way from business analysts and data scientists, also to non-technical professionals. It's possible to aggregate multiple reports to a dashboard on the Power BI service and share this to all users with the relevant permission. The last thing I want to touch on is for every decision. So essentially, these deliverables can be viewed on a variety of platforms. Just to give a summary of all of these, we have Power BI Service, which can be accessed on a web browser, Power BI Mobile, which is accessed as an app, and then we also have Power BI Embedded, which allows developers to integrate Power BI visualizations into their own platforms and websites. Hopefully that gives you just a brief introduction to Power BI. And that now brings me on to Microsoft Fabric. Microsoft Fabric went into general availability in November 2023, so it's still very recent. And it's an end-to-end data analytics platform, bringing together 8 key experiences, one of which being Power BI. These experiences are shown below. I'm just going to read them out so we're on the same page. They include OneLake, Data Factory, Synapse Data Engineering, Synapse Data Warehouse, Synapse Data Science, Synapse Real-Time Analytics, Power BI, and Data Activator. Fabric unifies the capabilities of all 8 of these experiences to provide a comprehensive and integrated approach to data management, analytics, and governance. This allows business users to unlock the full potential of their data using only one platform. There are also some AI capabilities in Fabric, which I'm going to touch on in just a moment. So this now brings me to the focus of our webinar, the updates in Fabric. Today, the ones I'm going to be talking about is Copilot, time travel, and AI skills. So Copilot, what is it? Copilot is an AI-powered assistant that is integrated into Microsoft Fabric, and it's available in all 8 of the Microsoft experiences, meaning AI can assist you through every step of the extract, transform, and load process. Copilot was made available in preview mode from November 2023, but it became generally available a couple months ago in May 2024. Essentially, you can converse naturally with Copilot to tell it how you would like it to help you. I'm going to go into a lot more detail soon, but essentially Copilot is able to create data flows, pipelines, propose SQL statements, and even machine learning models for you, even if you don't have any technical knowledge. So just before we get into this, some of the key benefits, I'm sure some of them already come into your mind, but just to go through them together. Firstly, enhanced productivity. So as I just mentioned, Copilot is able to assist with any data-related task. This can make a huge difference on the time spent in development. We also have accessibility. So as Copilot can assist you with every step, essentially, a wider range of users are able to work on data-related tasks, as Copilot helps turn complex processes into something that more user-friendly, which non-technical users can understand. Lastly, we have efficiency. So there can be some data-related tasks which are quite manual. I'm sure many of you spent time doing routine processes, maybe writing up codes that you feel like you've done hundreds of bits of time. Copilot can help automate this for you to free up time for some other tasks. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how Copilot can be used in 3 of the Fabric experiences. Hopefully this will give you a better feel how Copilot can be used. I would just like you to keep in your minds as I'm going through this, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are so many different queries you can give Copilot that will allow you to help you. Let's firstly have a look at how Copilot can be used in Power BI. It can be used in many different ways, and I'm going to break this into 2 sections. Firstly, when you're viewing a report. So we have interactive Q&A. So what this means is when you're viewing a report, you can ask Copilot a question about a visualization in your report, and Copilot will give you an answer based on the underlying data. So if we have a look at the example on screen, you may want to ask a question, for example, why is there so many sales in the United Kingdom? Copilot will then run a machine learning model on the underlying data and give you an answer. The next thing we have is dynamic drill downs. Essentially, what this means is Copilot can suggest the most relevant drill down path based on the data and user interactions. For example, again, looking at this screenshot and this chart or this diagram, Copilot might recommend drilling down into a specific product category or specific customer segment to explain why the sales are higher or lower in a specific country. Copilot can also be used when building a report. The first thing I want to talk about is visualization suggestions. So when you're building a report, Copilot can suggest to you the visualizations which would best describe your data. And then after it has created a visualization for you, Copilot can then recommend or customize the graph to then fit some other needs you may have, which you can give to it. And the last thing I want to talk about today is DAX auto generation. So essentially, Copilot is able to generate DAX queries, which create measures that are applicable to your data. This is possible just by telling Copilot in English what you're looking for. Many of you watching this webinar today may be familiar with DAX or used DAX in the past, and I'm sure some of you know how fiddly it can be sometimes. So what you can do using Copilot is you can ask it to create a measure for you. So having a look at this example, let's say I wanted to create a measure to show me the sales for the last 6 months. So if I select a quick measure at the top, then in this red box, which is highlighted on the right, I could select suggestions with Copilot. You can see I've entered here sales for the last 6 months. When I click generate, Copilot has created this DAX measure. You can see the code there, and it's given me the preview value, which is 4,015. Then by selecting the add button, I could add this measure into my data and use it in my report. The next thing I want to talk about is Copilot in Data Factory. Copilot can help in Data Factory in many different ways. The first one I want to talk about is activity recommendation. So essentially what activity recommendation is Copilot can suggest an activity to add to your pipeline. These recommendations are usually really helpful. And I find that even when building pipelines, Copilot can recommend activities that I'm already thinking in my head I want to add, or it could just give you some ideas or some inspiration about how you can improve the pipeline. The next thing I want to talk about is automated alerts. So essentially Copilot can generate automatic alerts that can track and make you aware of things. For example, pipeline runs, including whether a pipeline succeeds or fails, any data quality issues, and also performance thresholds, which can be really useful. The last thing I want to talk about is auto generation. So Copilot can generate data pipeline templates based on a user's needs. So again, if we have a look at the screenshot, on the right, I've got inside this red box, I have asked Copilot to build me a pipeline based on my specific requirements. Copilot then created this pipeline, which you can see here at the top of the screen. And then also you can see a bit of this auto generation. So activity recommendation, where you can see in the bottom right box, Copilot's told me it's updated the pipeline and it's given me some options, whether it wants me to run the pipeline or maybe add an activity, send an email when any activity fails. So this is all really useful and good things to know. But other than looking at how Copilot can be used in the creation of a pipeline in Data Factory, you may be thinking if Copilot can be used in the Power Query activity in Data Factory. So in this example, I'm going to be focusing on transforming data with Copilot's help. Imagine we've connected to some data sources. You can see on the left, I have the customer's data set, employees data set, order details data set, and it's cut off a little bit, but I've got an orders data set too. Let's say, as part of my requirements, I'm only interested in the European customers in this table. So on the right, you can see in the red box in the bottom right, I've told Copilot I only want to keep the European customers. And in response, Copilot has said, here's a suggested step for your query, customers. And it has a filter condition. By selecting that filter condition, you can see on line 4 of the query, it has filtered this data set to where the country is one of Germany, France, Spain, Italy, and the United Kingdom. So essentially what Copilot has done is looked through the data set and it has identified that I have those countries which are in Europe, and it has filtered my data set to just those. Let's have a look at one more example. So now let's say I would like to transform the employees' data, maybe to create an insight. What I've said, you can see again the query in the bottom right. I've said I want to count the total number of employees by city. So what Copilot has done is it's suggested maybe we do a group by. So if I select that, it has applied this group by. And you can see in the table, in the middle left, we have 5 cities and it has counted the total number of employees for each city. And then maybe I want to sort into the descending order. So then I can see that London has the most total number of employees, which is 4. And this was all done with no technical knowledge, just by asking Copilot in normal English to do this for me. Okay, so the last experience I want to talk about is Synapse Data Engineering. The first way Copilot can help in Synapse Data Engineering is with code cleanup. Essentially, Copilot can help improve your code by suggesting improved variable names, simplifying any code which is too complex, removing redundant code that is unused, and other features to help you apply best practices. This can be super helpful when you're coding and does save a lot of time. The next thing to talk about is data warehouse migration. So essentially, Copilot can automate some data warehouse processes and automatically update some procedures. Last but definitely not least, we have code creation. So essentially, Copilot can generate whole code for you and also provides inline finishes. When you're typing code, it will pose what the end of the line should be to save you a bit of time. And this speeds up the process when you're coding. So again, let's have a look at the screenshot to see how this can be used. I have asked Copilot the query, show me my top customer by sales over the last 24 months. What's happened is Copilot's returned this SQL query, and the SQL query is doing what I've asked. It's showing the top customer by sales over the last 24 months. Then I can copy this into the command cell. And when I run it, it has given me this output, and it's showing me that customer has got the highest number of sales over the last 24 months. Just as I wrap up on Copilot and talk about the next Fabric update, I just wanted to remind everyone that suggestions that Copilot provide should always be taken with caution, since AI does not always provide factual, accurate points. Copilot is meant to improve productivity in end users and should not be too heavily relied on for suggestions, although it is a very, very useful tool. Okay, so this brings me on to the next feature I wanted to talk about, which is time travel. This was made generally available in July 2024, so very, very recently. Data houses in Microsoft Fabric offer the capability to query data as it existed in the past. This is known as time travel. So essentially what this means is you can restore a data set to a state of a previous timestamp. For example, one that is given underlined in red, which is the 9th of May, 2024. There are multiple benefits of this, which I want to talk through. Firstly being stable reporting. So essentially, the ability to time travel supports stable reporting by ensuring data integrity, as you're able to view and query data from the past. This also gives you the ability to generate reports based on a data set as from a past point in time, such as the previous evening, while background processing is ongoing. The next thing I want to discuss, or the next benefit, is historical trends and predictive analysis. So time travel simplifies the analysis of historical data, helping uncover valuable trends and patterns through querying data across various different past timeframes. This facilitates predictive analysis by enabling experimenting with historical data sets and training of predictive models. It aids in anticipating future trends and helps making well-informed, data-driven decisions. The next thing is troubleshooting analysis. So time travel offers the ability to compare your current data with historical data, for analysis and comparison. This allows you to more easily identify the root cause of a bug if you can see how your data has been changing over time. And the last one kind of goes without saying, low cost and efficiency. Time travel is cost effective and efficient as it's available in every Fabric warehouse. Okay, the final feature I'm going to talk about today is AI skills in Microsoft Fabric. This was released in public preview in July 2024, so again last month. AI skills is a feature that allows users to integrate pre-built machine learning models and AI capabilities into their data workflows. Essentially, users put in effort upfront by training their machine learning model, which gives the model context about your data and improves its performance. You may be wondering how AI skills differs with Copilot, the other AI feature in Fabric. And this is due to the upfront training in AI skills, which is not possible in Copilot. It's a nice feature as it solves the challenge with many generative AI applications, which is the lack of context it has about any real-world system. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about some of its key features. So more focused AI. So on this screen, you can see the AI skills homepage, so to speak. Using AI skills, you can select the data that you want the AI to use to focus its scope on specific tables in your database. And this makes the answers given by your AI much more accurate. You can also configure for instructions. As mentioned earlier, a user can provide instructions in normal English to guide the AI to follow specific rules or definitions. We can also configure for examples. A user can give example question and answers to teach the AI how to respond to similar questions in future. I want to go into this in a bit more detail. So again, here you can see the AI skills homepage. It's the Explorer pane, as I just mentioned. You can control the accessible data. So when the AI is answering a question, it will look only at specific tables you want it to. Next, we have the interaction panel. Here you can enter a question and give a sample answer, or you can even write a question to test the model's response. By giving it a sample question and answer, you are guiding the machine learning model to the correct answer for any given data question in future, providing context to your data. The last thing is the model behavior panel. So here you can describe to the model the type of answers you're looking for. For example, if someone asks a question about the data over time, but doesn't specify a time period, you may want to say that you want the answer to default to maybe over a given number of weeks. There are multiple other Microsoft Fabric updates that we don't have time to cover today, but please feel free to reach out to me after this webinar to discuss any more of the updates or anything I've covered today. I'm now going to pass over to Oscar to discuss some of the new updates in Power BI.
Thank you for those Fabric updates, Toby. Now we're going to look at Power BI updates that recently came out. So first, we'll talk through visual calculations and what those add to the platform, as well as the new parallel development capabilities that have been introduced to Power BI, and we'll close with a little bit of a demo on that. So visual calculations are a preview feature that were released in public preview this past March, and it's a way to create calculations directly on a visual in Power BI. It has this intuitive interface where you can expand one of your visuals in your report. Below it, it will show the underlying data for that visual. And then in the formula bar, you'll be able to add or edit visual calculations and then preview those calculations on the resulting visual. So you might be wondering, what's the point of creating a visual measure when regular measures already exist? And the idea is to simplify the DAX experience, because depending on your context window for DAX measures, it may be difficult to write complex measures where you're referencing lots of variables or just trying to filter the data in the correct way. So these new visual calculations have built-in measures for running sums, moving averages, percents of totals. You can compare to other data points in the visual using these versus methods. So just a simplified DAX experience doing things that were typically harder in regular measures. And the idea is to enhance performance by reducing the number of complex measures that need to render, and instead using these measures in visuals that are simpler and more efficient. So while this feature came into public preview in March of this year, there was a subsequent update in June, which added new visualization types and added the ability to add visual calculations to those, which included the scatter plot or bubble plot on the left here, and then map visualizations on the right. So in this example, we're looking at calculating profit by taking sales and subtracting total product cost, which is definitely a simplified example, but just kind of gives you a flavor for what these visualization calculations can do. All right, so now we're going to transition to parallel development that's now possible in Power BI. But I'd like to first take a step back to think about kind of the current Power BI development workflow and how that's changing. So the current workflow, we have one user who makes local edits in Power BI Desktop. And then once they're happy with that report, they can publish to Power BI Service. So now if another user comes along and wants to edit the report, they download that report from the service and the cycle continues. The important thing to realize here is that really only one person can be working on the report at a time, as when they publish that report, it just overwrites the changes that already exist in Power BI Service. So not the easiest development workflow for a team. Let's compare that to the new workflow where we have multiple users who make local edits in Power BI Desktop or VS Code, as we'll get to later. Now, those users can push and pull changes to their Git provider, such as Azure DevOps, and then publish those changes to Power BI Service. So this is a big step forward in bringing modern coding best practices to Power BI, as we're now able to integrate with a Git provider so people can develop in parallel. So you might be wondering, what enables this new parallel development with version control? And it's really enabled through a file structure change, which before you think that's a really boring change, I promise the demo later will show that this is a huge benefit to the efficiency of team development in Power BI. So if we think about the current file format, when you save in Power BI Desktop, it gives you a PBIX file, which is composed of the semantic model, being like the data, the Power Query, the measures, the columns, and then also the report visuals. And you think about the fact that when you save this PBIX file, everything is wrapped into this PBIX file that you can really only open in Power BI Desktop. So it's a little bit hard to work with. Let's compare this to the new Power BI project file, or PBIP, which still has the semantic model. However, the semantic model is using the new tabular model definition language rather than the tabular model scripting language. And now there's the report section, which uses the Power BI enhanced report format, or PBIR, rather than the old JSON format. But the important thing to note here is the new file format saves the semantic model and reports separately in folders, which contain plain text documents, rather than all being wrapped up into one PBIX document. So let's talk about the advantages of this new file structure change. So the first is simpler syntax, which is just a nice quality of life feature. So what we're looking at on the right here is the same product table written in the old TMSL language and the new tabular model definition language. The nitty-gritty details are not super important, but it's just important to realize that it's easier to add comments to your code for the benefit of others. You can write multi-line measures with native support rather than wrapping them in kind of a JSON-like array. And then you also don't need the curly and square brackets that are seen throughout the TMSL. So it's just an easier editing experience. The second point is that since we can open these TMDL files directly in a text editor, we can now edit these files in something like VS Code, where typical code development is done, which is super convenient. And then we can now collaboratively develop, because these plain text files can be tracked by a Git provider. We can now work in parallel on different feature branches and then use something like Azure DevOps to manage our code versions. And I will point out, so these features started to come out in February in public preview, and there have been many updates since then. However, it's not completely out of general availability fully yet, so there are still some limitations that exist, but we've seen those limitations lessen over time. And I would expect as this becomes the new default, most of those limitations will disappear. All right, so now let's see this in action with a little bit of a demo. So let's set up our demo with a business use case here. So imagine we are a small department analyzing the efficiency of the New York City commercial airports shown on the right. The data we're going to analyze is 2023 domestic outbound flights from those three big airports. And the data model is shown on the right, just to give you some context. We have two goals, really. One is to understand what types of flights are departing from these airports. And the second objective is to analyze the delayed flight data to understand airport efficiency. When we started this situation, we were using the old PBIX format, and we ran into two problems. One being that we had a couple of developers, but we weren't able to utilize that bandwidth as only one person could work on the report at a time. Our second issue was that we weren't able to easily track changes across report versions, and because of this, mistakes kept cropping up in the production report. So now let me flip over to Power BI Desktop. So now we've transitioned away from the PBIX file, and we're now using the Power BI project file. So you can see that I've opened this new file in Power BI Desktop, and you might be wondering what's new in Power BI Desktop. And the answer is really that the Power BI Desktop experience is staying the same. So we can see one of our business objectives was understanding delayed report or delayed flight data. So here we have our delays report in Power BI Desktop. I'm able to edit measures, edit tables, edit and create visuals. We can see, over the different months, what's the average delay, which flights are being, or which destinations are being delayed, and which airlines are being the most delayed. So the experience in here is really the same. So you might be wondering, well, what's the point of this update? And the point of this update is now I can open this report in a text editor like VS Code. So here I've opened the flights table, which we can see is one of the tables in the data model over here. And we can list all of our measures in one place and see them all at the same time. It's easy to edit these measures and add new measures, and those will get added to our Power BI report. We can also scroll through and see our data columns, as well as the bottom contains the Power Query, which sources this table from a SharePoint file. So we can see all of our tables right here in this tables folder, so we can edit any of them as we'd like. We can see our relationships between the tables and which columns are connecting those tables. And then it's not just the backend semantic model that changes. We also have the report folder now. And we can look at the different pages and visuals, such as this visual, which is a slicer for the date, which we can see in the top right here. And so we can control anything about it, like its position, its width, its height, things like that. So now any change that you could make in Power BI Desktop, you can now make in VS Code if you'd like. So since these are text files now, I've connected this to a Git provider, and you can see that I'm currently on the master branch. Now I'm going to hand over control to Toby, and he's going to show how this parallel development works.
Thanks, Oscar. So let's imagine I'm another developer working on this project. I'm working on a different branch. If you see here, I'm working on the feature overview page branch, whereas Oscar was working on the master branch. So essentially, I'm working on the same repository, just in a different branch. And the purpose of this branch is to create another sheet in the Power BI reports, which we're going to call an overview sheet, which essentially is describing an overview of the flights. Because I'm in this feature overview page, if I open the same Power BI report Oscar was working on, you can see this is different to his Power BI reports because I've got this overview sheet. Still got this delay sheet, but this is what I've been working on. And this is what's different to Oscar's Power BI report. So essentially, due to Git integration, I'm able to work on the same project as Oscar simultaneously, but my Power BI desktop looks different because I'm on a different branch. I did not have to download anything from Power BI service to get this new report. Git version control allows multiple users to work on the same project at the same time. When I'm finished with my changes and I'm happy with them, I can then push this change to the master branch. So then when Oscar's working on the master branch, same as me, he will also be able to see this Power BI report. I'll now hand back over to Oscar.
Thanks, Toby. So now you might be wondering, we have these different report versions. How do we manage them? So that happens in your Git provider, such as Azure DevOps in this case. And we can open pull requests, just like modern coding standards typically use. So we can look at a pull request like this, and we can very easily understand if we're merging this feature branch into the master branch. We can see that the flights table is changing. We're adding 4 lines to the table, which include the earliest departure measure. So if we go back to our business use case, now we're able to utilize all of our developers in parallel, and we can easily track report version changes using a Git provider like Azure DevOps. All right, so if we flip back over to the slides and we go to the next slide, let's talk about these takeaways. Verbally, I've gone over most of them at this point, but it's just good to have them in one place. The first, again, we can track changes using any Git version control provider, and the image to the right shows what those commit messages might look like. The second is we can view and edit multiple measures at one time in the text file. which is a nice editing experience in my opinion. And it's really anything about the report, not just measures that you can change. The third is that parallel development is possible using feature branches in your Git provider, so people can work on different aspects of the report at the same time. The fourth is good to remember that the Power BI desktop experience can continue to be used as it was before if people really like that experience. So we're not losing that ability. And the last thing is we can switch report versions without manually re-downloading files from Power BI service, which reduces the risk of overwriting someone else's changes when publishing to Power BI service. So with that, I'll wrap up. I appreciate everyone's attention today. If you have any questions, please reach out to Toby or I at the contact information provided here. Those questions can relate to the content today or just anything generally related to Thorogood. So thanks again.